St. Margaret's Children's Ward stands empty, a monument to tragedy and abandonment. For 40 years, these halls have gathered dust, medical equipment frozen in time like grotesque sculptures. But something here refuses to rest. Every night, as the clock strikes 3, a haunting melody drifts from the old nurses' station. A lullaby, playing to an audience we couldn't see. Until last week. What we discovered in those dark corridors has haunted us ever since, because something, has been listening to those nightly songs. And after what we found, I now understand why the night staff always refuse to work alone. The history of St. Margaret's is written in whispers and sealed records. In 1985, the hospital shut its doors after a series of unexplained deaths in the children's ward. The official story claimed it was a tragic accident, a nighttime fire that claimed 6 young lives. But the truth lies in the details they tried to hide: the missing patient records, the mysterious resignations of 3 night nurses, and the head doctor who vanished without a trace. The music box at the nurses' station, they say, was a gift from him to the children, a final lullaby before everything changed. Even now, covered in decades of dust, it sits there like a silent witness to whatever happened that night. We weren't taking any chances this time. Our team set up cameras in every corner of the ward, determined to document whatever was happening here. But nothing could have prepared us for what we found. In the old recreation room, pinned to a bulletin board, were children's drawings, crayon sketches of dark figures and twisted smiles. The paper was fresh, dated just last week. At first we thought it was vandals, until we heard it. A soft humming, like a mother singing to her child, echoing through the empty halls. It grew closer, leading us to room 301. That's when everything started going wrong. Our equipment began failing one by one, cameras cutting to static, batteries draining in minutes. The temperature dropped so low we could see our breath, and then we heard it. The distinct sound of small footsteps running away from us in the darkness. Someone, or something, was playing games with us, leading us deeper into the ward's secrets. The deeper we ventured into St. Margaret's, the more the hospital seemed to come alive around us. Our audio equipment started picking up sounds that shouldn't have been possible. Children laughing, playing, as if the ward had never closed. At first, we tried to rationalize it, blame it on old pipes, or wind through broken windows. But then we entered the nursery, and everything changed. The temperature plummeted so suddenly that our breath froze in the air. That's when we noticed them. Tiny handprints appearing in the dust on the windows, forming right before our eyes. No one had touched that glass in decades. Yet there they were, small fingers pressed against the pane, as if watching us from the other side. But the most chilling evidence came from our security footage. The old rocking chair in the corner, covered in years of dust and decay, suddenly began to move, back and forth, with the same gentle rhythm a mother would use to rock her child to sleep. We watched in horror as the movement grew stronger, more deliberate. When we played back the thermal imaging, it showed something our eyes couldn't see. A small, cold spot in the shape of a child, sitting in that chair. The footage revealed more. In the background, other cold spots moved through the walls, gathering around us like curious children approaching a stranger. We weren't just witnessing a haunting anymore. We had stumbled upon something far more terrifying. The children's ward wasn't abandoned at all. It was still in use, just not by the living. The sheer size of St. Margaret's forced us to split up, a decision we would soon regret. In the basement archives, hidden behind a false wall, we discovered a cache of medical records that made our blood run cold. Dr. Harrison, the head physician who vanished in '85, had been conducting experiments on the children. Not treatment, experimentation. The files detailed procedures that no ethical doctor would ever perform, especially on children. Pages of notes described using the lullabies to prepare the subjects. the music masking their cries from other hospital staff. While reviewing these horrifying documents, strange lights began appearing in the empty rooms around us. Soft, bluish orbs floating at the height of a child. Then the voices started. Clear as day, children calling out names. Dr. Harrison, Nurse Mary, come play with us. But most disturbing were the names we didn't recognize, names that appeared in those hidden medical files. Sarah Phillips, age 6. Michael Torres, age 4. Tommy Baker, age 7. Each name matched perfectly with the records of children who had supposedly been transferred to other facilities. Transfers that we now know never happened. The deeper we dug, the more we realized. The official story of a tragic fire was a carefully constructed lie. These halls held darker secrets, and the spirits of these children weren't just haunting the hospital. They were trying to expose the truth. Every lullaby, every moving chair, every handprint was a desperate attempt to tell their story. And now, decades later, we were finally listening. But something else was listening too. Something that didn't want these secrets revealed. In the ruins of the nurses' quarters, we found it. A worn leather diary belonging to Nurse Sarah Collins. Its pages revealed a truth more horrifying than anything we'd imagined. The lullabies, those gentle melodies that still play at 3 a.m., were never meant to comfort. They were a cover, a mask for something unspeakable. Dr. Harrison had convinced the hospital board that music therapy would help the children sleep. But the diary told a different story. The music was played at maximum volume to drown out the screams. The children weren't dying from illness. They were being silenced. Each note of those lullabies marked another victim of Harrison's twisted experiments. But here's where it becomes truly terrifying. When we analyzed our audio recordings of the current lullabies, we discovered something that made our hearts stop. Playing them backwards revealed voices, children's voices speaking in unison. He's still here. He never left. He's waiting for more. That's when our security camera caught it. A small figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching our team. But it wasn't one of the children's spirits we'd encountered before. The thermal imaging showed something different. A cold spot in the shape of an adult, wearing what appeared to be a doctor's coat. The figure raised its hand, beckoning, and every lullaby in the building began playing at once. Through the cacophony, we could make out words that still haunt us. Time for your medicine. Everything happened at once. Every piece of equipment we had, cameras, lights, phones, died simultaneously, plunging us into darkness. Then, breaking through the silence, the old music box at the nurse's station began to play. Not the usual lullaby, but a distorted, broken melody that made our skin crawl. We tried to escape, but the doors had sealed themselves, trapping us in the ward. That's when we saw them. Dozens of small figures emerging from the walls, floor, and ceiling. Children, but not as we'd seen them before. These spirits showed us how they died. Each one bore the marks of Harrison's experiments, surgical scars, missing limbs, twisted forms. They surrounded us, their ghostly forms flickering in and out of existence, pointing toward the locked door of the hospital's restricted wing. The lights began to strobe, each flash revealing more of the hospital's horrific truth. The walls themselves seemed to bleed, revealing hidden surgical theaters where Harrison had performed his procedures. Operating tables with child-sized restraints, cabinets filled with vials of unknown substances, and scrawled across the walls in childish handwriting, "He's making more of us." In that moment of terror, we realized the true scale of what we'd uncovered. The experiments never stopped. The hospital never really closed. Somewhere in this building, in some dark corner between our world and theirs, Dr. Harrison was still practicing. And now, thanks to our presence, he had new subjects in mind. Behind a crumbling section of wall in the basement, we found a room that shouldn't exist. Modern medical equipment hummed with life, surgical tools laid out with terrible precision. The walls were covered in symbols, not graffiti, but ritualistic markings that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Now we understand the truth about those nightly lullabies. They weren't memories of the past. They were warnings for the present. The children weren't trying to show us what happened to them. They were trying to stop it from happening again. Our final piece of evidence came from the security cameras outside the hospital. Every night, at exactly 3 a.m., shadows move across the parking lot. Small figures, hand in hand, being led through doors that should be sealed. Children checking into a hospital that officially doesn't exist. St. Margaret's isn't just haunted, it's still operational. And somewhere in these halls, Dr. Harrison continues his work, using the boundary between life and death for his experiments. The lullabies play on, not to comfort, but to warn those who might wander too close. This hospital is still accepting patients, and some of them never leave.